Hello, today I'm going to go over a couple of key points about academic language. So I pulled up this PDF which was provided to us, and I felt it was pretty um, important and helpful in defining exactly what academic language and language demands are. So, for example, here it shows us the type of language we're going to have to include within our lesson plans. So when we have our learning objectives, we would select action or active verbs to really demonstrate what students are going to be doing in our lesson. So, for example, students will be able to compare the civilizations of the Incas and Aztecs. So, whatever the learning objective is, whether the students are comparing, explaining, or describing, we're going to have to use these words throughout our lesson plan, but not necessarily the word itself, but really proving how our students are going to be comparing and explaining and describing. That has to be visible within our plan. Another key aspect that I found here to be important was the use of subject specific meanings, and that's very important to understanding how language interacts within our lesson plans and how we're expected to really help our students understand academic language. So, for instance, subject specific words have double meaning. So, something like table, which to an average student or learner, it would mean like a kitchen table, but in our subject specific area like history, social science, a table could be like a graph or a chart which would indicate um, you know uh, income disparities between minority groups or things like that. And then the next one would be something like ruler. Ruler, of course, students use to measure things with, but a ruler in our subject matter would be like a king or a queen, um, and so forth. So you see here, power, class. These are words that have double meaning and can mean multiple things. But as history teachers, it's something that's very automatic for us to understand. So we got to be mindful of this and really define it within our lesson plan and also make it evident to our classes. So one good way would be to have highlighted definitions on the board, um, or if we have a graphic organizer that we're providing to our students, list those words and maybe provide a couple of definitions to sort of clarify. And it's very helpful for EL students and students who need just a little bit of more help. Another important aspects would be just the general academic vocabulary. And this was already kind of touched on where we use these verbs like comparing and analyzing, evaluating, and describing. Um, that's what we're really focusing our lesson on, and this is what the students are expected to be able to do at the end of the day. And again, subject-specific words. This can go hand in hand with the subject-specific meanings, but these are just words that you would find specifically within our major. So the typical words would be like constitution, republic, colony, alliance, neutrality, frontier. All of those are just words that we've grown to become familiar with, but students probably have not been exposed to them very often. So I wanted to go into my primary source that I'm going to be using for my video. And for example, I chose to highlight the word depression because it clearly has a double meaning. And that's one of the words that I'm going to include in my lesson plan and when I'm accounting for academic language, because depression is an economic term where uh, the economy goes down and wages are coming down and there's rampant poverty. That's what it's describing. But the general um, public would see depression as like a mental illness condition. So it's just important to be aware of these differences that might seem very obvious to us, but not to our students. Um, and as evidenced by my lesson plan here, I have some definitions here that I believe students might struggle with. And as I mentioned, depression would be one of them. But then we also have the content specific ones like legislation, act. Acting would be obviously like, oh, like an actor, but no, it can be a piece of legislation or something that's enacted by the government. Census, curtail, just words that students are not familiar with. And here are our language functions where students are um, expected to describe and analyze things which are reflected here. So students will analyze the different policies which spurred and later discouraged immigration into the United States. So my lesson plan would be focusing on immigration into Ellis Island. And so describing, we have students will be able to describe the development of Ellis Island through the perspective of European immigrants. So here is basically just a quick overview of how students are expected to understand language and see how it's going to play a role in their understanding of a certain historical time period within my lesson. So yeah, thank you.